are running away from the profession because of Obamacare. They're fleeing the profession. We know that it's going to cost, no surprise, a heck of a lot more than what the government told us it would cost. And the estimates are 2 to 3 times what they told us it would cost. Think about it. We can't afford Medicare, and we were just given another even bigger entitlement. For you all, we know, because if we listen to businessmen and women, they tell us in survey after survey, Obamacare is the single greatest reason why they're not hiring or growing. I don't know why we don't listen to businessmen and women. I'm of the opinion that it will bankrupt the country. It will throw the country into another recession. It will ruin the profession of physicians and docs. And so it needs to be repealed. And I know I have a reputation as that Joe Walsh. He never compromises about anything. I think a real surprise would be if Mitt Romney's elected and we repeal Obamacare. I think very quickly you'll see Republicans and Democrats come together to work on 2 to 3 to 4 real, effective, smaller reforms that truthfully we all agree on. Tort reform. Let Americans shop across state lines for insurance. These things called health savings accounts, where we literally put each and every one of us more in charge of our own health costs. We will expand. And by the way, Obamacare gets rid of that. And then real high-risk insurance pools for folks with pre-existing conditions. There are 3 to 4 small patient-centered reforms that Democrats would work with Republicans on. But you can't do this unless you get rid of Obamacare. And we don't have enough time in the day to talk about Obamacare. We don't have enough time in the day to talk about all the taxes. Just think about the lunacy of Obamacare. Built in there, one tax in there is a tax on medical device manufacturers. That'll put medical device companies out of business. Why is that in there? Why is that part of a piece of healthcare legislation? There's scary bad stuff in there that we cannot allow to stand.
Is it realistic to think that it can be eliminated at this point?
Well, you know, a lot of this is politics, is how the election comes down. If Mitt Romney's elected president, if the Republicans take the Senate,
those are 2 big ifs.
Especially
the Republicans
2 big ifs. Let's play it out. Let's say that's what pans out. Yes, Mitt Romney will repeal it, and the House and the Senate will vote to repeal it. And actually, you know, Chief Justice Roberts, now the Supreme Court declaring it a tax, means you only need 51 votes in the Senate to repeal it. If you somehow have divided government again, if President Obama is reelected, and part of the answer I always give is, this is our only chance to repeal Obamacare. Sink in. Let that sink in. This election is our only chance to repeal Obamacare. Now, having said that, if President Obama's there, and you've still got people like Joe Walsh there, I can just promise you I'm going to fight with every ounce of strength I've got to deny any cent of funding to implement Obamacare. So I hope the House Republicans will still engage in a very hardy fight to push back against it.
You mentioned that Obamacare was approved with all Democrats. The Democrats would say, well, that's because Mitch McConnell said in the beginning that we were going to, that our #1 goal is to get rid of Obama, and we're going to support him in 2000. How do you react to this view of Republicans and yourself in particular as the party of no and people who just oppose everything?
See, I knew it. I couldn't say it. Look, some of you have heard me say this, and I know this isn't going to sit well with everybody, but that's all right. Look, life is short, the future of this country is at stake. So whether you agree or disagree with what I'm saying, you better pick a side and you better work hard, because this is the most important election in our country's history. I taught American government and I taught American history. When I'm done with politics, I'm going to go back and teach. We are beyond broke. I have no idea. You all have no idea how much trouble this country's in. It's taken us a long time to get into this mess, to the point where we're flat broke, we have a government we can't afford, we're not working, and our economy's not growing. It's taken us a long time. And it's taken politicians, both Republican and Democrat, who over long elections have said, my only goal in life is to get reelected. That's all I want to do. I just want to get reelected. So we've trained our politicians to promise us things election after election. And they've given away things election after election, and now we're flat broke. Now we sit here in 2012, and I say the country is going through sort of a second revolution, okay? We're going through a real grand debate to figure out who we are as Americans. It's going to take a while to figure this out. It's taken us a while to get into this mess. And I've said this, my job when I got elected in 2010 was to stop this president, period. If that doesn't sit well with you, I apologize. But we're at the beginning of something here. I hope the next step after this election is somehow the country sorts it out, Republicans and Democrats sit down, and we figure some things out. But our job was to stop it. I'll give you one example, one important example. You all know, because you're smart, this country's raised the debt ceiling how many times over the course of the last 20 or 30 years? Republican and Democratic president, right? 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, how many of you knew what the debt ceiling was? Nobody did. Nobody did. But because these troublesome House Republicans went to Washington 2 years ago, we said, no, stop. Stop. We're broke. I'm worried about my kids and my grandkids. We are not going to automatically raise the debt ceiling again. And we had a big fight last year about the debt ceiling. And you know what? Everybody in this country now knows what the debt ceiling is. I think that's a good thing. So whether your president is Romney next year or Obama, next time a president comes before Congress and says, come on, I need to borrow more money, I need to borrow more money, now Congress is going to say, no, stop. We have to make some fundamental cuts or some fundamental reforms. This is a good thing. So at the party of no, it was the party of stop, wake up America. We've got some tough decisions to make.
Debt ceiling debate itself is about to resume.
Probably pretty quickly. Actually, that may come up before the next president's elected.
And if so, is your position changed now from where it was before?
I voted last year against every debt ceiling deal. I voted no against raising the debt ceiling every single time. I will continue to do that. And I will hopefully, if right now the projections are we may need to look to raise the debt ceiling sometime between the election and the end of the year. How miserable would that be? But again, I'll take the same position I took before. We cannot keep borrowing this money, and we need fundamental cuts to our government and fundamental spending reforms. Folks, every single day of the year, your government goes to its banker and your government borrows $4 billion. Your government goes to its bank every morning of every day and asks that bank for $4 billion more. That's not how much your government spends. That's how much your government borrows. And when the banker asks, well, Mr. Government, how are you going to pay that back? Our government just says, don't worry. Our kids and our grandkids will figure that one out. Government goes back to work, the sun comes up, here comes government again to the bank the next morning, borrowing another $4 billion. We can't sustain this. We can't do this And this debt alone, unless we stop it, has already probably pushed us into another recession.
Switching gears slightly, and maybe going back into some of the things we started about in the beginning, one of the things that your opponent mentioned was your opposition to the transportation bill. And the transportation bill is only a 2-year bill this time. It's going to be coming up, regardless of who's elected or whether you're reelected within 2 years. What things do you think need to be changed about it, and what's your attitude towards how the transportation bill can help you with this?
And I support, this is one of the roles of our federal government, I support a major transportation bill, a 5-year bill. Again, for some reason, the wise men and women in Washington never do anything long-term. We never do anything permanent. We extend tax rates by 6 months or a year. We've got a fiscal cliff hitting us at the end of this year that's just going to pale everything else. We fought over a transportation bill. Should it be a year or two, when the people out here who were going to work on our roads and highways were asking for a 5-year bill? We didn't give them that. I voted against the transportation bill because even the Republicans did what Democrats did before, and we went to Washington to stop this. Ms. Duckworth knows, but she won't tell you, it wasn't just a transportation bill. I was asked to vote on a transportation bill, a student loan bill, and a flood insurance bill, all in one big bill. And I don't know about you, but I think that every member of Congress should be on the hook and have a voice and a vote for each one of those things separately. And I asked my speaker, I said, Mr. Speaker, can we vote on the student loan bill on its own, flood insurance on its own, and transportation? Nope, we put it all together. And I went to Washington to change those games. So that's why I voted against that big, rotten bill. I absolutely support a long-term transportation bill because our roads and highways are falling apart, and this is a role for our federal government.
Okay. You've just about run out of time, so you have 2 minutes to complete your program.
A couple quick things. I'm a freshman. Had never served before. I ran for Congress, and I hope to get reelected because this country we all love, Ms. Duckworth and myself, Obama and Walsh, this country we all love is perilously close to being lost and never, ever, ever, ever being able to get back. A really important election, but I want you to leave this room with a smile on your face because it's also a really easy election. There is such a big difference between the way, say, Ms. Duckworth thinks and the way I think, that nobody should be confused this election. When President Obama said a few months ago that you didn't build that, you didn't build that, you didn't build that, and we all chuckled, folks, that's how he believes, okay? He came into office with a mess on his desk because he believes Washington creates jobs. He borrowed $1 trillion and he tried to get Washington to stimulate the economy. It hasn't worked. I don't believe Washington creates jobs. I believe you create jobs and I believe you create jobs. And I want my government to say, here are the rules of the road, the permanent rules of the road, and then I want my government to get out of your hair so you can go do your thing. And for 3.5 years, we've been doing the exact opposite. And we've been making it impossible for the people who hire and grow to do those two things. And until that, I don't care who the faces are in Washington, until that changes, this economy is not going to get up and grow. If you genuinely like the direction this president's taken the country, and you genuinely like Obamacare, and you want government involvement in your health care, in fact, if you want government running your health care, you can't vote for me. Please don't. If you want people who make $200,000 and above, if you want their taxes to go up, I am not your guy. I want millionaires' taxes cut, and I want the guy making $200,000, I want his taxes cut, and the woman making $75,000 a year, I want her taxes cut. I want each and every American to keep more of the money they make. Because I think when you do that, good things happen. But not everybody in Washington thinks that. This is what we fight about. None of this is personal. We got to get this economy growing, get Americans working, and by God, we better do something about this debt. That's all I, as a voter, care about. And too many people in Washington don't get that yet and aren't serious enough about it yet. Let me close with this. This drives my staff crazy. I shouldn't be saying this to you. In many ways, I could give a darn about my next election. The problem is we've elected Republicans and Democrats for years. All they care about is getting reelected. I went there to try to just do my little part to get this government out of your hair. I wanted that small business subcommittee chairmanship because I went there to be sort of a lone ranger for small businessmen and women because you have a target on your back. If that means I have to say things or do things that make people angry at me, so be it. We need to start electing Republicans and Democrats who don't care about their next election. And if we don't, this country's not going to recover. Thank you.